Ladies and gentlemen, sapoops from all over the world, lots of drama involving Thailand recently, hence the title of today's video. You probably would have heard of the stories of Tamim Dahri and also Zamri Dino. I'm not sure if it's really accurate to say that they're both wanted at this stage, given that Zamri has come back to a hero's welcome at this point in time. But today we have a very special guest introducing Mr. or shall I say, Dr. Murray Hunter. Murray, it's an absolute honor and thank you for being here as a
Well,
representative of the wanted men in Thailand or once wanted men in Thailand.
great to be here, Victor, and nice to meet you, not in person, over the air.
Now, the reason that we're here actually is kind of interesting. Now, some of you would have watched my podcast with Critical Spectator just a while ago, and you may have seen this interesting little comment right over here. Did I deserve to be put in a Thai jail for criticizing Malaysian authorities? That doesn't include the torture. This is you, right? This is not like a fake account, right? Nobody went and created a fake account just to comment on this video.
No, that was me. I,
Okay.
I, I watched your video on Saturday,
Ah, I
and
see.
then
Okay.
after I watched it, then I thought I better make that comment.
Well, thank you for watching that video. And that's partially why we are having this conversation today. But also because, Dr. Hunter, I've read a little bit about you. And in fact, right over here, I have a small surprise for you. I own a book that you wrote a while ago with Mr. Lim Tek Gi as well. And we've had some conversations about some of this stuff, but you were basically detained at an airport on the way to Hong Kong, if I'm not wrong. So then that ended up as a rare cross-border case whereby you ended up having to face trial. And I thought that it was interesting because at the time you were wanted, but then so too were these guys. And I wonder if you see like any similarity. I mean, you do have your fair share of critics, some people who say that, well, he is an agitator and he is just saying bad things. It is natural, it is right that he should be detained. So, what do you say to all of that?
Okay, just call me Murray. My name's Murray. No
Sure.
pretenses today. Let's be
No,
informal.
Dr. Hunter. Okay, got it.
Um, okay, well, that's a wide thing. How long have you got? You want 5 hours or 2 hours, I don't know where to start.
Definitely not 5 hours. Yeah.
Yeah. But I guess I'll start with the mechanics of it. What happened? I'd planned after COVID. COVID was a long time. I wanted to go with my partner Paul to Hong Kong for a month. But over the last few months, we were staying on the other side of the country, in the northeast of the country, beautiful part of Thailand. And a home that I had, not my prime residence, started getting a lot of attention. So the MCMC bots seemed to love my house, and they were outside the house, or the CCTV showed that they would sort of stay 24 hours in cars outside. We weren't too sure what these people were up to. Then one of the neighbors sent a picture of an arrest warrant, and it was in Thai, but it had the person who was the complainant, because it was for criminal defamation, MCMC. So knowing the law, the MCMC doesn't have an office, doesn't have a registered organization in Thailand. How could you commit criminal defamation against something that doesn't exist? So we took it to the police in northeast Thailand where we were, and they said, "Oh, this is a scam. There's a number to call, and probably, they're going to say, we'll fix this. You're going to be under arrest. But if you pay so much to this bank account, it'll all go away." We just did not know. In Thailand, that's common. Anyway, thought nothing of it. 6 months later, we go for our trip to Hong Kong, paid everything up front, and we're about to go to the airports, the immigration and airport security, and two immigration officers come up, and they rang my partner. So I don't know how they got a number, and they said, "Where's Murray Victor Hunter?" That's my full name. And anyway, they came to me and they said, "Is this your name?" I said, "Yes." "Okay, you are under arrest. Someone in Bangkok, one of the police stations, have got an arrest warrant for you. It's on the system." So I got taken up the back. And I was totally shocked, under arrest for what? For criminal defamation to something that doesn't exist in Thailand. Anyway, I was taken to the police station. They wouldn't speak English, not very nice, and took everything away from me and put me in a lockup for 24 hours.
Wow.
From one morning to on the 30th. And then they took me out in handcuffs the next morning to court, where my partner and that could, and they had a lawyer ready. I was charged with writing about some organization in Thailand. The night in the police station wasn't fun, because every half an hour they'd come and wake me up and I'd have to stand up and turn around. And I spoke to one of the senators who's the chairman of the Committee for Human Rights, and he says, this is torture. That's his word, not mine. So basically I was tortured as well, which is not according to the procedures of the police. Police don't torture you in jail. I was.
Wow.
So went through that and got bail and missed a holiday in Hong Kong. So that cost a lot of money, paid for accommodation and airfares. And I was heading to court for something that's happened in another country. So the story is that somebody from the MCMC came across to Thailand and found a policeman that would do the job, because it only takes a policeman to go into a court and get an arrest warrant. So this is all actually going to the Senate. There's a Senate inquiry on this. Was the arrest warrant valid? Did the police screen these charges? And why did the prosecutor proceed with such charges in the court? And that's going to go on. So there'll be a postscript to what happened to me in a few months' time. So anyway, we went through the court case, and I was very lucky. The United Nations contacted me because they considered this transnational repression. The international media got behind me. So I did interviews with ABC in Australia, The Guardian, Independent, Diplomat, 20 or 30 different organizations.
Wow.
And we were ready to fight the case because an NGO in Thailand called Thai Lawyers for Human Rights wanted to do the case. And they're a very well-known NGO. They do all the Les Majest case. So I had the best lawyer in Thailand. They're very, very well-known, and everything was pro bono. So I was very lucky. When it rains, somebody gave me an umbrella. So that made me feel better, and we took it to court. But I had to live for 4 months with no passport. I had to go every 2 months to the court to go to the immigration to get it extended, my stay, and then take it back to the court. And I lived 1,000 kilometers away from Bangkok, so that was torture.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
I couldn't go to the bank, couldn't get a flight, couldn't leave the country. So when you can't leave a country, you feel like you're in prison. Not that I travel, but when you can't leave the country, you feel in prison. And the thing about this case, the penalty for 4 charges of criminal defamation is 8 years in jail. And at 68 years old, thinking about 8 years in a Thai jail, that sort of wasn't like going to, the ice cream shop and getting your favorite sundae. So
definitely not.
Yeah. So I decided, even though my lawyers wanted to fight it because they saw the case, I had a very strong case. I decided, rather than have 2 years of not having a passport and not being able to travel, that I'd come to a mediation, which the court wanted to do. So I was very happy. So I asked that my Substack, which had been blocked for 3 years, I don't know why they wanted to get me for criminal defamation when my Substack was already blocked by the MCMC. And then I would be able to talk to people in the Malaysian media. I lost 2 columns. I had a column at FMT and a column at My Sing Chu, and they told me that they were told that I can't be writing for them. So I lost everything.
Wow.
So I was able to get that back through the mediation. So I had to apologize. So we spent about 14 hours negotiating that. Mm-hmm. They kept the courts open till 9 o'clock at night so we could finish it. They wanted to get it out of the court. Mm-hmm. But anyway, there's an inquiry on now about procedures, whether the police, the prosecutors followed the procedures. So I'll be going to the Senate and participating in this inquiry. So that's what happened with my arrest. As a journalist, when I was put into the cell and the cell door closes, that clink really has an emotional effect. And I thought about Yusof Rathla and Adnan at Malaysia Kini, because they were on remand. I think Adnan was on remand for 5 days in the MACC, and Yusof Rathla was in solitary confinement on death row, would you believe? They put him. So I just thought this is a great experience to feel what they felt. And fortunately, I only had 24 hours of it. Yusuf Rafa had 8 months and Adnan had 5 days. So I got off very cheap. That was enough to actually experience what happened. So a lot of people are very critical of me. A lot of foreign journalists who are all well paid at big organizations. You gave up. You gave into them.
You sold out, Murray.
Sorry.
So they're going all, you sold out, Murray. How could you?
Yes. So no, I got my website back. I can travel, and now we're working on changing the law in Thailand. I'm working with all the NGOs here in Thailand to get the law changed so this can never happen again. So I think that's more valuable than fighting for 2 years. And what do you get at the end? If you win the case, what do you get? You get your passport back, nothing else. So I just did not see the point of fighting for 2 years. So here we are. Today we can talk. Before I could never talk to you.
Right. Yeah, this is very interesting. And for the reference of the audience right over here, I am going to show what you just described to me. Your public apology and retraction. This is what you wrote, right? Like when you were, in the auspices of the deal.
Well, that took 6 hours to negotiate that one paragraph. There were all the articles that had to be taken off Substack. And a lot of people that made comments, well, that's criminally defaming, those articles. And remember, at the same time, there was the same case going against me in the civil court in Malaysia who found me liable for defamation. I didn't even know it was going on. Mm-hmm. So it was like a kangaroo court with a star chamber making a decision. I'm liable for defamation. I didn't even know the case had gone on until it was on the news in Malaysia. So that's a sort of legal system that I was dealing with. So I don't have the greatest respect for it, that people can be found guilty and found liable when they don't even know about the case. I think that Claire Rucastle Brown, she was sentenced to going to jail and she wasn't even in the court. If you ask my views about the legal system, I'll tell you that I don't have much respect for it after my personal experience.
All right, cool. And for further reference, the kind of thing that Murray happens to write about, you can see a whole lot of different discussions about Malaysia, Malaysian society, Sabah's revenue right, and so many other things right here. Now, what you've described actually is a very contentious series of events. It's something that, some people dispute along the way, not least Datuk Ahiruddin Atan, who says, the victim here is not Murray Hunter. He is the perpetrator, the attacker. The victim is your own institution, MCMC. LFL is Malaysian and MCMC is Malaysian. The least LFL can do is be fair. And that actually brings me to why I'm doing this podcast in the first place. In the Critical Spectator episode, somebody came out and said, why are you platforming this particular person? But in my case, what I think is valuable for society is that we not accept things uncritically and that we can hear what people have to say for themselves rather than just looking through the lens of the media, which can often be sometimes more convex than it otherwise should be, more concave. A very common way that some people might go ahead and criticize you might be, who are you? Who is this person from Australia? Why do you dare to write about my society? You are nothing but a foreigner. Shut up. Don't talk about my society, my country. You do not belong. And when you think about that, so then how will you respond to that?
Well, I first went to Malaysia in 1978, I think it was. How many years ago was that? 4 children are Malay or half Malay. They're eligible to be Malaysians. They actually chose not to. They ran away to Brisbane, but they could have been Malaysians. My father-in-law is A.R. Tompel.
Wow.
So I have family in Malaysia. My brother-in-law is A.R. Bado.
Wow.
So, I have emotional and family connections there. I worked for the government, MADI, the EPU, the IDS in Sabah, the Chief Minister's Department in Kuching, Sarawak. I was an associate professor at UNIMAP for more than 10 years. and I had a business before that for 20 years. So I've had a lot of experience in Malaysia. I had, the Kas C designation in the civil service. So I know from the inside. I wrote part of RM9. So I've had a lot of experience in government.
Yep.
My bosses were ministers.
And I find this like very interesting. And those of you who are watching this and who may have just been hearing about Murray for the very first time, you can actually read a lot of this actually from his Substack right over here. You can see that the man is in fact a person with a lot of experience, very accomplished person as well. And you can see right here. But that being said, I guess you still do have a lot of people like thinking maybe that like, he's not qualified to be here. He's not allowed to really like talk about our society. And I wonder to what extent it's actually just something to do with your being a person of Caucasian descent, basically a white person. And to what extent it's because maybe people are just not really intent on thinking. But either way, you're not going out there and singing I am, you are, we are Australian, but somehow you have this fascination with Malaysian society. What is it that fascinates you though, Marie, about Malaysian society, and how did you even start writing about a lot of these topics in the first place? You say that you have family connections, but there are lots of people out there who have like family connections or who have an interest, for example, in Malaysia. They may be from different countries, different nations, and other places like that. But why would you put yourself at personal risk? Why step on the toes of people who have power and might very well choose to act against you?
Well, back in 2005, when I had a plantation in Perlis, up at Basri, Perlis, and I had a run-in with the powers, the MB, the SUK, and all sorts of funny things happened. Where the area around my house, which was on the plantation, was burnt. I had people with shotguns coming into the housing area where I lived, coming to the door. Once I was in Sabah, and the CM at the time, the MB at the time, saw me with Tan Sri Mahmudin, who was the agricultural minister at the time. Suddenly, all the gates around my property were locked, like for retribution. So I've had run-ins with these guys for 20 years now.
Wow.
And I know what it was like to be in Perlis with no money. I've been living in Perlis and I had no money because they blocked it all. So I know what the poor people feel like personally. I've been one of them, even though it's a foreigner. I've been wanting, by the way, I was offered citizenship. Lucky I didn't take it because I might have been dragged back to Malaysia, and I prefer a Thai prison than a Malaysian prison. So maybe I made the right decision. So
offer citizenship for what though?
Well, I worked in government.
I see. Okay.
And I was working on high sensitive things.
So was it like they told you, hey, so like we can't give you access to certain things unless you're a Malaysian citizen? I think they do something similar for people who are in the US military, right? Like you can only be working on military projects if you are a citizen of the United States of America, that kind of thing. Was it something like that, or?
No, I was working on development.
I see.
And I did my job because I thought when I was working on development that I could help change this country. And I went to Sabah, and I've been in Sarawak, where all the Orang Ulu are in the mountains, and look at how we can benefit their lives. In Perlis, there are people who lived in Perlis that don't have a floor. They have just ground for a floor, no furniture, no TV. I've seen these people, and these are people that I felt I should try and do something about. So that's why I enjoyed working with government. And many times I got money to do projects, only to see the money disappear in treasuries in the States. So that happened 2 or 3 times. So when you see that happen, I start to become concerned about the system. What's wrong with the system? So that's why I started writing. There's things wrong. This should not happen. So that's why I became concerned. And that's why I tried to expose a lot of these things in education, because I was in the university. If I saw corruption in the universities, I'd report that. And I had commandos come to my house twice to pick me up because I wrote critical things about people in a university.
Wow, that's
so
crazy.
I remember one time I had to cross the border, and I went and asked for assistance from the EU. That was back in 2013, 2014.
Mhm.
This is not the first time for me.
Wow, that's crazy. But if we think about this whole situation here, would you say that in this case, differing from what Rocky Brew might say, right? So he says that you're an attacker, but in this case right here, you've also told me that you started writing in response to injustice. So then, in that sense, then you say that you are a victim and you respond to the way that you have been victimized by writing, speaking truth to power in this case. Why do you believe that you are in this case fighting for justice?
Well, I just believe that's what I'm doing. I saw things that were wrong and I tried to expose it and write it. And this case came when Anwar Ibrahim came to power. He said, expose all the corruption you can in the federal and state governments. And
When
people
you say
contacted me.
when you say this case, like what exactly do you mean? Do you mean like the case where you ended up having to apologize to MCMC?
No. This is later on. This was cases before that. So in Selangor, the issue of the stadium, the issue of halal
Right,
in
right.
Jakim, the issue of hospitals and malpractice, the issue of water, safety of water. These are all things that I took up. And I had people who came to me for help. I took up these cases because they came to me because nobody else would take up the cases.
Mhm.
And sometimes I didn't want to do it, but then I realized if I don't do something, nobody's going to do it for them. So I took up these cases. I wanted to write books and I wanted to do other things. But when people come and ask for help, I felt that I have to try and help them.
So like it's a combination of different things. Number one, you have your sense of justice and you feel that you're right. But number two, people come to you saying, Murray, please help us because we need somebody who is actually willing to speak up. And I think that what you're referring to, correct me if I'm wrong, is stuff like this right here. Am I right?
Yeah, there's a lot there, yes.
There's a lot. Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
So would you say that you're the kind of person who gets very enraged when you see injustice happen out there in the world? Or what is it that kind of drives you to keep on with this sort of thing? Because if you think about it, it seems like the more difficult thing to do. You could ignore the emails, you could ignore the voice inside you that tells you, hey, like, I have to do something about this. And when you're doing this kind of stuff, like it is happening at extensive personal risk to you. So why? Like, do you just keep on doing it?
Well, it's sort of if you don't do something and you know somebody's in trouble, it's not easy to sleep at night. So some people go to a church, some people go to a mosque, some people go to a temple. I go to my notebook and I try and help somebody. So you can think about it like that. But it's not just Malaysia. I've been in trouble in Australia. I've been in trouble in the US. I've been in trouble in Singapore.
I
I don't
see.
think I can go to Singapore. I'm banned from Singapore.
You're banned from Singapore.
Yeah,
So,
so Singapore, Malaysia. I've been put in the lockup in Thailand. So that's 3 countries.
wow.
So I'm either a really bad dude or I'm doing something that has some effectiveness. I don't know. Other people can judge.
Well, something can be effective, but it can be for good ends or it can be for nefarious ends. But at the same time, we know from medicine that sometimes the determination of whether something is a poison is the dose and also the purpose. I guess you could say that you were effective, definitely causing, for example, Muis to release a full-on clarification, which is arguably the kind of thing that a person might say is very effective if you wanted to make, I guess, a lot of people angry. So it depends on like what you mean by like effective, I guess.
No,
If
no. In that case, that was Singapore, wasn't it?
Mhm.
That was a Singapore case. Yeah. Well, I had a lot of Malays
Mhm.
in Singapore come to me talking about corruption in MUIS, the Majelis Ugama Singapore, and halal. A lot of corruption in halal, which was connected to Malaysia. And we found in Australia that some of the meat that was shipped to Malaysia and Singapore and Indonesia was not actually halal. Now, as a Muslim who knows about halal, and I know that meat is not halal, I have a duty to tell people to be wary of this meat. There's something wrong here. So I'm just fulfilling a duty to tell them that the meat coming from overseas, in this case Australia, was not halal. So there was a big team. There was a team of 20, 30 people who helped do the investigative journalism and put it up. And the import of meat from that abattoir was stopped
Wow,
for
I see.
almost a year until they got all the procedures right.
Yeah.
So sometimes you win. And then every Muslim in Malaysia can be rest assured that the meat that they buy, the daging import from Australia, memang tanggung halal. So
Wow.
I think that's important. You know, that's not running away and doing mischievous things. That's helping people make sure that their diet is the
Yeah.
way they want it.
Wow. And that's actually kind of a beautiful thing. But I'm curious about the timeline though, because like this whole idea of like the fake halal meat scandal, right? I mean, I've read about it before. I just didn't know that like you were that involved to the point that like it was like teams of people actually helping to deal with all this stuff right here.
That was separate from what happened to me in Thailand. You know, that went on. And I remember the ministers in the PH government were saying that I'm very abusive, I'm insincere, and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And I won't say who that minister, well, both of them, the minister and the deputy minister, say I've got ill intentions and all that. But to me, the Muslim that tries to protect people's food, I think that's a duty that one must do. If one does not do it, they're not doing their duty. So they're the ones that have to answer in their world about their actions. That's corruption. That's one form of many forms of corruption.
Right. Thank you for sharing that. So when you think about this whole experience of your being wanted in Thailand, you know, I'm inclined to then think again about like what happened with Tamim and also with Zamri. Because if you were reading the news, you would know that the IGP of Malaysia basically just announced that they were on the run in Thailand, which later on then that turned out to not actually be true, at least according to the lawyer of Zamri Vinov. And with Tamim at the moment, so he is saying, "Catch me if you can. How do you know that I'm in Thailand?" And it's really kind of like an interesting drama that we can see right here. But another interesting case is also the case of a certain James Chai, who was implicated in this unfortunate situation in which he was basically doxxed by our NACC. And you can see that they actually published his address, a bit of a situation where he has called the whole investigation, the doxing, a circus. So when you think about this whole situation, there are a few possible interpretations of that. One of which is that, well, these people are actually doing their jobs, and in fact, they are really enforcing the right of the government to pursue people who are creating problems in our society. And another interpretation is that perhaps they're acting in a bad and a malicious way. Yet another interpretation is that they are just incompetent, and that is why they are going after people and jumping the gun and so on and so forth. So when you think about the whole situation right here, what do you feel is the right way of interpreting what's going on right here? Is that really a pattern, or is it just maybe bumbling followed by proper actions and then possibly even more bumbling? Because on my part, right, like I've had no personal problems with the MCMC. In fact, I would say that like I've historically had like a decent relationship with the MCMC. I've even reported my own videos to the MCMC, and I've actually been assisted by like our Minister of Communications. I don't know if that's going to continue at some later point in the future either. But when you think about the whole series of things that have happened, so how do you interpret this whole series of things? Are there any patterns that you could speak of?
Well, I can only talk from personal experience. And I think it was 2022, 2023. There was a press conference by the IGP saying I'm a fugitive under the 3 R's for defaming royalty or something. I don't know what it was that time. And they've called Interpol and they've got a red notice and a blue, and then another newspaper said it was a blue notice. And I'm only a 68-year-old guy behind a keyboard, retired in my house. And suddenly Interpol's after me. Red notice I see on the movies, you know, like red notice on Netflix. Oh my God, there's a red notice. So I wandered around looking, making sure there's no Interpol coming to pick me up. But what I found, the whole thing was there was no red notice. There was nobody looking for me. So it sounded good. You know, it made the police look like it's really good. Now, people come to Thailand, and if they're hiding and they're in southern Thailand, the special branch have a lot of people in southern Thailand. In Het Yai, I think there's 2. I used to know one of them before COVID. You know, we used to go to the same restaurant, Makan, and I know his special branch. And I know along Sungai Golok and all that area, they're around, they're loitering around the hotels. So if they want to get somebody, they know how to get them. There's many different levels of cooperation between the Malaysian and the Thai authorities, and the police have one. If there's a crook that robbed a bank in Kanga and drives across the border thinking he's safe, the Malaysian police will come across with the Thai police and they'll just take you back to Perth in half an hour. So anybody that hides in Thailand thinking they're going to get away with it in the south, there's all these things they've got. These special branches got like 15,000 informants. So they may not be directly employees, but they'll be informants and they'll be briefed. So, that's part of the show now. You've got to show that you're doing your job with the forces. So that's why they have a lot of things, they arrest them and they show them on TV and they have them walking up. It's to make them look like they're a law enforcement organization.
Yeah, so that's definitely a very hard sell. But even as we come towards the end of this particular conversation and we look at like some of the things that you have said on Substack and the different topics that you are, passionate about, whether it is that Malays are second-class citizens in their own country, which I found to be an interesting piece. I don't think that everyone going to agree with it. But you've got like so many of these other things that are just coming out right here. And I can still see this like enduring fascination with Malaysia as a society. Like right now, I guess like you're living in Thailand, in Hat Yai, people could expect you to just be all like party, party, party. And like even right now, you have like the shirt for it. So why not do that? I mean, why continue just thinking about Malaysia? Why let Malaysia live rent-free in your head? I mean, usually for a lot of Malaysians, right? So like they do the exact opposite as you. Like they literally go throughout high school preparing to get scholarships or to go overseas so that they can run away from this place and they try to have new lives somewhere else. But in your case, you are literally someone who abandoned, I am, you are, we are Australia. Well, not abandoned because you do write about Australia still. But you came from Australia into Malaysia, developed a long and extensive career in academia, entrepreneurship, in even the civil service. And then after having come here and arguably been underappreciated relative to what you should have been, you go off to Thailand and you continue writing about Malaysia. Why, Murray? Why?
Well, when I worked in Malaysia, I used to come to Thailand every weekend because I'm only 80 kilometers from Kanga, where I am now. I'm not very far from Malaysia. So I used to go across the border before they had passports. You used to be able to just drive across the border in the old days. That's 25 years ago. So it's not much different. I speak Malay in the restaurants here. There's so many Malaysians here. This is like being an extension of Malaysia.
Wow.
So I'm sort of in Malaysia without being in Malaysia. I like it. But being more serious, I care. If you give me some medicine to say, oh, here's some medicine to stop caring, then, I can stop. But I care about Malaysia and I care what happens. And I had all the hope that many other people had when, PH came to power. We thought it was Merdeka, relive. And I had hopes. Now I'm sad that things are not going the way we had hoped. I wanted to tell people, warning. So a lot of the things I wrote were warnings. Things are not going right here. And then they said, oh, you're being paid by, PN. You're a PN stooge. But what I said now, which I'm not saying now, everybody else is saying because it was the truth. So all I try and do here is act as a mirror for Malaysians. So I've got stuff written by Chinese and identity, which you saw. I've also got a 50-chapter book that was published about a Salafi who was in prison under ISA in Singapore. So I've got stuff written by Salafis. So I'm across the spectrum. Nobody can say that I'm biased towards this side or biased towards that side. I try and be in the center. That's what a good journalist should do. They should be a political atheist. And you can see now, my job now, what organization am I working for? Where are they slanted? People say I'm anti-PH, but I work now for the vibes. That's because I can be a political atheist and I can be objective. People will accept it. But you get trolls. Malaysia's full of trolls. There's lots of troll farms, and there are people who are biased, and so you have to live with that.
Mm-hmm. I see. Well, as a citizen of Malaysia, what I will say is thank you for caring about our society. And that's a genuine thing that I want to convey to you. I know that you have deep family connections and so many other ways that have led you into a destiny bond with my country of birth. And as someone who understands what it means to care and also appreciates the depth of thought and the emotional investment that a person must have in order to develop care in the very first place. I want to say from the bottom of my heart that I deeply appreciate the fact that this is what you have chosen. It is the harder thing to do to care, I would say, especially in a society nowadays where this idea of individualism and wanting to pursue your own life often takes precedence over that sort of feeling or emotion. The astute critic might then say that it can be individualistic and it can be selfish to care for others, but I think that it is an act of fortune that we have managed to somehow get you to take heed of the circumstances of our society. Even though some people in Malaysia might then say, well, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. But still, I appreciate the sentiment and I appreciate the feeling that you've brought to bear caring about my society. So thank you, Marie.
Thanks, Victor, and it's been great talking to you. And I love watching your YouTube.
Oh, thank you so much. Well,
So
do you have
keep it
any
up.
Thank you so much for the encouragement. Do you have any immediate things that you're really passionate about, at least whether in relation to Malaysia or geopolitics in the world at large, that you think that the world should know about?
Number one, I'm so happy that you've taken up this vocation of being an independent journalist, running your YouTube channel in an environment in a country that it's not easy. And you've been lucky and you've been good of keeping out of any problem. So I hope that you can continue it. And I hope that in 20 years' time, if I'm still around, I can see you still doing something and making a great contribution, because what we need the fourth estate, and it's gone. The media has been desecrated. That's one of the victims of the last 3 years now. We don't have people who want to be investigative journalists, because if you're an investigative journalist, you might get thrown in lockup. So you go and work for a PR manager in a company and you earn 3 times the amount. So journalism in Malaysia is at a rock bottom. And if you see the media portals now, I'm waiting for the day where I can see freedom of the press again. I think you're going to a dark period. So I just hope for that. And you're part of that.
Mhm. Thank you. I appreciate it. All right, then. Well, thank you so much, Murray, for being a part of this podcast. I think that that's a very heavy trust. And on that note, so thank you, Dr. Murray Hunter, for popping by onto my podcast. And I hope that the whole Senate hearing yields the result that you want. And again, thank you for caring and have a great one ahead.
Thanks, Victor. Have
All
a
right.
good day.
Thank you.